right, so we want to describe what yin is.
Okay.
Wait.
I just did the workshop on yin last week, so this is all fresh in my head because I
Great.
did that it ended up being more than 2 hours because I approached it in the most nerdy way possible, and I just it's all up here.
I love yin.
I do too.
I love yin. So so describe yin.
Okay, yin yoga started in the 70s by a martial artist named Polly Zink. He called it Taoist yoga at the time, so it was a crossover between hatha yoga poses, let's just say yoga poses because then we'll get everything confused. Yoga poses and the idea of traditional Chinese medicine, martial arts, things like that. So almost like if you took like Tai Chi and yoga and you smushed them together.
Yeah.
So the goal was more rooted in Chinese medicine. So in yoga, we usually hear about chakras and then moving energy through the chakras. Yin yoga works on the meridians of the bodies of Chinese medicine. So there are 12 meridians, and now I can't remember all of them, but it's like kidney, liver, bladder. They relate to some other systems. So goal is to stretch the connective tissue rather than the muscle tissue.
Which takes longer time.
It takes a super long time.
Because it's dense.
It's dense. It's super dense. It's fibrous. It's like plastic wrap over something. It could get really smoothed out if it's healthy, but it could also get all bunched up and get little like clumpy bits in it, and you need to smooth it back out. That's when you get areas of restriction. So it was in terms of our overall flexibility, muscle tissue is only 40% of our flexibility. Connective tissue, joints, so that's joints, tendons, fascia is the rest of our flexibility. So only 40% of our flexibility is muscle. So the idea is to go into it not using muscle flexibility. So like video, I can do this. So if you're going into a forward bend, you can stack up a billion bolsters and you can go into it until you just start to notice a stretch, and then you're there for, how long do you do it? Like 5 to 10? 5. I'm always good with 5. Like 10, that goes in, I don't know, that goes a little too long for me
Because I feel like, because one of the challenges with yin is overstretching. You don't do it, it's not something you do every day.
No. Because, especially with hamstrings and behind the knees.
Because you need that stuff. It's like a rubber band. If you stretch it too much, then it's no longer a rubber band.
Yeah.
And you need that shit to stay tight enough, stable enough to support your hips for like walking.
Yeah, right.
Or else you're
I know, and most of us are really tight in our hips, so it's a good kind of antidote to the sitting that we do and all the other things that we do in our other practices. So I try to describe it as a complementary practice rather than one that you would do on your own. So whenever I talk about yin, I think it makes it sound like I don't want people to do any other type of practice because I love it so much.
Yeah, I know.
That I end up making it sound like you should only do yin, but it's like yin and yang. So yang yoga is going to be your flow or your movement practices.
It's the heat, it's the sun.
Yeah, muscle. So muscle tissue is yang, connective tissue is yin. So balancing out those two things.
And yang is the masculine, yin is the feminine.
Yeah.
The sun and the moon.
And then
yin is cool. So it's not in his purposely heated room.
Right. I think it's even better. I've always read that you don't need to warm up.
Right.
It's preferable that you don't warm up.
Yep.
We've got connective tissue covering everything, all of our organs, everything in our body. So you don't need to go into a very deep stretch to make it effective.
Yeah. And the one thing that I do try to remind people about yin is that if you are an athlete, yin you do not do prior to your athlete things.
No,
you don't do long static holds prior to running or
blah,
blah, blah.
Did we stop doing that as a society yet? Like, I think that like personal training and the fitness industry has stopped the static stretching before activity.
I hope so. I just remind people because like
it's not. Yeah, we don't need to do that. You want dynamic movement. You want to move your joints in ways that they're going to be moving into your workout rather than doing a static stretch.
Because that'll also warm them up prior to it.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, yin all day long. Well,
Yeah.
not all day long. Let me be careful about how I say it. But
Yeah.
afterwards, then yin, for example. So that would be the only way. But I wouldn't say go for a run and then do yin yoga, because I personally don't think that you should have warmth prior to yin.
That's a good point.
Because then there's that same challenge of where I feel like hot yoga warms you up too much and you're overly flexible and then prone to injury.
And you're typically in your anaerobic threshold. So
Yeah.
you've got your aerobic threshold, which is depending on your age and your whatever, it's, you know, it's a little bit more than your resting heart rate. So anaerobic is going to be way up there, and you're not supposed to be in that range for, I don't remember the exact numbers, because then at that point your body starts going into its stored reserves for fuel, and it's usually the things that you don't want it to use for fuel, like muscle tissue.
Ketosis,
Yeah, you don't want your body to start using the
eating itself.
muscle tissue when, you know, maybe you're going into it and you're going to use your glycogen, so like the sugars and the carbs.
So basically I would say don't do yin on your heavy workout days. Or in the same session.
Probably not.
It's a different session.
No, I think so too.
I think it's its own thing.
I really agree. I think it's its own thing for sure.
Like if your day off is Monday, then yin is your Monday thing.
Yeah. And each pose, because it's how longer, can become a meditation.
Yep.
So if people have a hard time just sitting and meditating, I think yin can be a really nice complementary practice to everything, because you're not necessarily doing anything. You're in a shape, so maybe you're in like your feet are further out, so maybe you're in a diamond shape and you're folding forward over your props.
Yep.
But you're meditating in that place.
Yeah, and you're breathing.
You're breathing. You're focusing on the shape. So when you're sitting and meditating, you're just focusing on the breath. When you're in any of these yin shapes, pretty much the same thing, but you also happen. It's almost like a little teeny bit of multitasking.
Yeah. Well, and
no,
that's
not really multitasking. It's mindfulness. Yeah, with very minimal movement.
Yeah. And that's why, the yin that I teach, I do yin with trivia. Because I don't want you to think about engaging anything. Your mind. Let's just do trivia, and then that's it.
Do people?
Yeah.
I haven't been to that. Do you find that people do better with the trivia when they're in the? You should study that. You should do some research on it. Are people able to recall this information better when they're in these more restorative shapes?
There's some. I think it depends on the person and the body type, but there's some people who are literally they're in so much anguish. That they can't think about anything but their hips. But then there are some folks that are like, they rise to the challenge.
It's challenging.
And the trivia does take them out of the suffering.
Everybody, people hear yin yoga and they're like, oh, it's gonna be so easy. And then they get two poses and then they're like, my mind will not stop.
Yeah, and that's why, like, anytime I describe it, I'm like, this is not gentle. This is not restorative. I was like, this sucks. You're going to hate me now, and you'll walk out happy.
Yeah.
Just saying. Fair warning.
And you reach a point in some of them where you're like, how many minutes have I been here?
there was one of my students told me that, so she would come to my yin classes, and she finally fessed up. And she's like, are you even watching the clock? She's like, and then she said afterwards, she's like, I was just so concerned that Berg wasn't watching the clock and stopping at 5 minutes. We were
trapped forever. I've started reminding people that they're not a hostage in the pose. And I think that was important, because I think some people will suffer through pain because they're like, I'm not sure about if this is good pain or bad pain. It's like, pain is bad in yoga. I mean, you definitely...
Sharp stabbing pain, bad.
Any pain, so especially in your forward bend. I think we talk about forward bends every time we do a talk. If you feel sharp pinching pain behind your knees and your forward bend your knees out of prop. But
here's the thing. So the discussion about pain, I think, is important, because when you're talking about people getting into a mind-body connection. So and in one of our last talks, we talked about relative pain. So because I need my body to do my job, pain to me hurts more probably. Like an injury hurts more because so my relationship to pain is different. Or if I purposely always avoid potential situation of pain, then pain also is more to me. So therefore, there may be some people who have a different relationship with pain versus discomfort.
There's such a massive psychological
and people who won't allow themselves to feel any sort of like, okay, that's my hamstring stretch, you know, and I'm like, oh, can't do that.
Yeah.
Because I just don't know enough, you know.
When I did my yin workshop last weekend, I had some yoga teacher trainees that were in there, and I brought up a few times, because I'm in social work and I think about mental health, I think about trauma, and I felt like it was important to note that for people who are recovering from trauma, if it's PTSD especially, a practice like yin might be too much. It might be for a variety of reasons. So one of the symptoms of PTSD is hypervigilance, so a hyper-awareness of whether it's your environment, whether it's sound, whether it's sensation. So if it's sensation, yoga could be...
It's a lot of sensation.
It's a lot. And in a yin practice where you're working with these very deep, long holds, and things start to come up, some people notice that because they're only focused on their breath, that certain emotions come up. So somebody that's dealing with trauma might benefit from that practice, but they might not feel safe in that kind of practice too. So I've been trying to think about ways to
that's interesting
teach in a way that is going to be psychologically benefit people who may be in that situation. I will self-disclose. So within the past year and a half, I don't think have I talked about this on any of these? About my husband's accident? No, I don't think I have. So in June 29th, 2017, my husband was in a motorcycle accident. He was dead. Did I tell you that? I think I've told you most of this.
I don't think I know that he was dead.
He was dead. He was dead on the ground. They had to bring him back. They had to intubate him. He was in the hospital for 2 months and then in rehab for...
How long was he dead?
I don't know. That's the thing. Nobody knows because it was at an intersection. It was at the intersection of Bethel and what's that one? No, it was Bethel and what's the one by Straders?
Oh, way down there?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's
33?
That's 33. So 33 in Bethel. So it was at that intersection. So he could have been there for a very long time. I don't know. But he had a traumatic brain injury. He had a broken foot, a broken arm, a broken elbow, his triceps detached from his arm, broken ribs, so a lot of different things. And he was in a coma for a while, and then one of the things that happens with people that are recovering from brain injuries is aphasia, which we've definitely talked about aphasia, so not remembering certain words, having difficulty speaking. He didn't remember who I was for a long time, so it was super traumatic. So I ended up with PTSD. So
you, to be clear, you had PTSD.
Yeah.
From his experience.
I had PTSD from seeing that experience, and that's how I met you, was because I was experiencing hypervigilance, and in my own classes that I was teaching, having the sensation of some of these poses was creating almost like instantaneous panic attacks. So I had to adjust my practice, which is why I think when I started coming to you, I was like specifically saying restorative, because I was hypersensitive to heat, cold, loud noise, too much movement in my body. So if my heart rate would go up for like cardio, anything cardio intensive, like a flow, it was like instant panic attack, and I would have to leave the situation. So for me, so firsthand, I think I can describe that that bringing that body awareness back for somebody that's experiencing trauma is like the thing. Like we have all these studies now that are showing that like previously we were going from, they describe it as like from the top down, so focusing on the cognitive aspects of trauma only, like getting people to change their behavior. So if your trigger is loud noises, just go expose yourself to a bunch of loud noises, just do the exposure therapy. What we're finding is like soothing the body, soothing the nervous system first, and then getting into the other stuff is what's actually going to help. So that was how I approached it with yoga, but I had similar issues with yin, especially hip openers. If I was in a really long held pigeon, I would reach a certain point where I was like, oh, I'm trapped. I am trapped. I'm not safe. And it would send all of these fight or flight signals to my brain that I have to fight, or freeze. So right. I would have difficulty with that. So that was kind of what I was getting at with like some of these longer held poses and yin yoga, is that it can be intense, because there's a couple ways people will approach it. Is they'll freak out and they'll get that fight or flight, or they'll never come back because they don't have the tolerance yet. So
yeah. And were those things something that you were just figuring out? Because in thinking back, like I had you suggested that you could go into some pigeon things. I mean, so in some of our things. So I was thinking like, were you figuring that out at the time then?
As I went, and that was part of how I worked through it. Because when I say I had PTSD, like I really believe had is important, because over the last year and a half, by going through and doing certain types of yoga practices, and then coupling that with counseling, and just having a support system around me, like I don't meet any of the criteria anymore for PTSD. So I think that, obviously counseling is important, but I think adding yoga to that was like the biggest deal, because bringing that awareness back and like releasing tension, like whether it's in the fascia, whether it's in the muscle, sends a signal to your brain that it's okay to relax. So if you're in that fight, flight, or freeze and you're experiencing trauma, you might be tighter already, but it's because your body's keeping you there to protect you. So that's where practices like yin can be really difficult, maybe too much for some people, but ultimately it can also, on the other side of that, be really healing.
Yeah. But it does. It seems like it's a real fine line, because that is specifically what yin is focusing on, is exactly that thing to a heightened point.
Yeah.
This is the thing that you're supposed to be working on. That's kind of intense.
It's super intense. Yin is, I think, one of the most intense types of yoga. Especially if you've been practicing a while and you're used to like a vinyasa practice.
I think it's a lot. I think it's more mental than physical. Gotta be honest.
Totally.
Absolutely. Physically uncomfortable, sure, but it's the mental aspect of what you're gonna do with that.
Yeah. You just gotta sit with your own mind for
5 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I try to bring up the concept of being non-judgmental. So I bring up ahimsa. So we were talking about ahimsa, like it's kind of one of the yoga rules.
Yeah.
It's one of the yamas.
I think it's one of the most important ones.
I think so too, because it's treating yourself with that respect, compassion, getting rid of the shoulds.
Yeah. There's no should in yoga.
Yeah, but you have to also, on the same side of that, you have to be able to sit with yourself as you are right now. In each of these shapes. So if you get into your hip opener, like I still can't do fire log on my left side.
I call it double pigeon.
Or double pigeon, fire log, whatever. I still can't do it. Like there's like no matter where I bring my foot, there's a ton of space underneath. But like that means for me, I have to add a bolster, I have to add a block, and then I have to sit there with it for the 5 minutes or whatever amount of time and not go, what the hell? Why is this knee popped all the way up? Why can't I do it on the other side? I can't do it on this side. And then just like chatter away. And then if you start with that, then it crosses over to other things like about your body, about your life, about whatever, and then just puts you in that state. So it's sitting with whatever comes up without judgment.
And I think so as a student, that's the one side of it. on the flip side then is a teacher creating the space. That's what I was talking about. You know, as a teacher,
totally.
I'm creating space. I'm holding space for these things, safe space. You know, so one of the things, like again, like because I'm adding the element of trivia and sort of conversation.
Yeah.
I also really try I try to get to know my students well enough so that I'm also adding like humor. You
Yeah.
know, like okay, so if your knees are in your ears, then let's go ahead and put blah blah blah. You know,
that helps.
because I mean you
Humanizes
gotta
it.
yeah, like you know, because I think sometimes the way that we as teachers describe the use of props, and if you feel like you need to have a prop, then go ahead and do
Go
that.
ahead and grab a blocky big baby.
Right, yeah, so it's like, yeah, I
grab a bolster if you're a wuss.
right, you know, and I feel like there are times like, you know, maybe, and I try to be good about it, so if anybody ever feels bad about the way that I, you know, offer up props, please tell me, because like, seriously, props, use them.
I know, I'm always really excited when somebody uses props.
Like,
and I didn't tell
yay!
them. Yeah, somebody had
Good job grabbing the strap.
forward bend. They had 3 bolsters, and I was so happy about that because they were just
Yes.
like here over a pile of bolsters. It was like, yes, you get
Yeah.
it. Like I was so. I think I even like I tried not to make a thing out of it, but I was just like, yes.
But I mean, that's also like self-care.
Yes.
You're saying I deserve 3 props, and
Yes.
what I love
exactly.
even more is when a student actually asks for more. Like,
Ugh.
I think I need another thing.
Yes, like
Yes,
I love that
Because not only I like helping people, let
Yeah.
me serve you,
that's why I'm here, man.
and you asked for it.
I know.
Good job.
I love that. I love when somebody asks for more props, or if they don't have any props and they're like, oh, I think I need like a bolster or a block.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
And that's also, they're getting
bring
that
you all the
body
things.
awareness.
I love that. That's exactly what that signals to me.
Yeah, like, oh, yeah, I feel that thing. Oh,
Yeah.
I don't need to feel that thing. You know, it's like, it's acknowledging that my brain is connected to this thing.
Yeah.
I've recognized a sensation, and I'm also acknowledging, like, I don't need to suffer.
No.
This doesn't need to stay this painful.
I mean, you always hear like life is suffering or whatever, but like,
Yes,
it's like,
it is.
it's like, I think, oh God, one of my favorite authors is Haruki Murakami, and in one of his books, I can never remember which book it is, he talks about how in life, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, and I think
That's a good distinction.
I love that.
It's your intention, it's your mindset, it's your choice, it's your, you know,
Yeah.
not all things in life are a choice. Things happen to
Right.
you, but your response to those things, that's your choice.
Exactly.
How
Yeah.
you let it make you suffer, you know, things like that. That's big.
Yeah. I think too, like the attachment to outcomes too is a big
Yes.
piece with yin yoga. It's like
Yeah.
it's really easy to get caught up in your attachment to the outcome of the pose
Yep.
rather than allowing the moment to unfurl, which is I think goes
Yep.
back to ahimsa as being comfortable with where you are in that moment, which is what I think makes yin a really, really I wouldn't call it a beginner practice.
No.
I don't think I would want a beginner to jump into yin unless they had some kind of like meditation practice maybe, or maybe martial arts background or something else. Like I don't think I would want a new beginner to jump right into yin and expect
Yeah.
it to be I could see that there could be benefit, but I think it would maybe not be the place to start.
Yeah.
Because there's so much else that needs to be happening.
Yeah. You need body awareness, and you do need to have some level of, I think, mental, I don't know what I want the word of. Like, you've
I
got
feel like I know what you're
like
you wanna
mental
say.
exercise, mental, like I've got a mental practice,
Some kind of practice, yeah,
Yeah.
like a meditation or like a mindfulness. You've got like
or you're used to that
a
mental training.
little bit of mindfulness already happening, because
Yeah.
otherwise that's when you're gonna jump into yin and you're gonna get hurt.
Well, thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. So this is kind of part 1 of the yin. The next video coming up, you will see the rest of our discussion about yin, as well as some other discussions about, I wish you could see my air quotes, detox, and other things of that sort. If you enjoyed this, please click like or subscribe. I would welcome any comments, feedback, suggestions, things like that as well. And please consider becoming a Patreon patron. Visit patreon.com/yoga happiness to become a patron. The patrons of Patreon are helping to support these videos. They also get free streaming of my 6 a.m. classes on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you can't make it live streaming, the minute that I'm done with the class, it becomes a recorded session, again, only for Patreons. So that's another bonus to become a Patreon patron. So I'll see you in the next video. I hope you enjoy this new Yoga Rebels. We'll talk a little bit more about that in upcoming videos. We just settled on the name of our little podcast. So we'll talk to you next time. Namaste, and may the force be with you.